The room fell silent as Commander Davis slammed the rifle case onto the table. "No one can make that shot," he said, voice sharp and dismissive, eyes sweeping the gathered SEAL officers. "Distance, wind, elevation. It's impossible. Not one of you could pull it off under pressure, and I've been running teams for 20 years. All eyes turned to the newcomer standing quietly in the corner. She was slight, unassuming, and utterly ordinary in appearance. Jeans, a plain t-shirt, hair tied back. Her name was Lieutenant Mara Hayes, 26, first assignment, and no one, including the veteran SEALs, took her seriously. Mara's jaw tightened. Inside, her pulse hammered not from fear, but from determination. They didn't know her. They didn't know what she could do. And she planned to prove it. The mission briefing was brutal in its precision. 3 high-ranking generals would be inspecting a simulated battlefield, and a single sniper had to neutralize a set of remote electronic targets strategically placed at impossible distances. The parameters were exacting: 1,800 meters, shifting wind currents, uneven terrain, and minimal cover. Davis gestured to a high-tech map. "These targets are moving unpredictably. A miss could compromise the entire operation. Any hesitation and it's failure. And failure has consequences." Mara's heart didn't falter. She memorized every angle, calculated trajectories in her head, imagined the wind vectors, the pressure, the vibration of the trigger. She knew, as she always did, that preparation was half the battle. The other half was instinct. During practice drills over the next few days, Mara worked quietly, unnoticed. The SEALs mocked her attempts behind her back. "You're aiming at the horizon, kid," one whispered. "Forget it. Nobody hits that range." Mara smiled faintly, shrugging it off. Let them talk. Doubt was a weapon she had learned to wield, against them, not herself. She spent nights adjusting scopes, testing rounds, and mentally rehearsing every possible scenario. One evening, she stayed behind at the shooting range after everyone else had gone. The wind whipped across the open field, mocking her persistence. Mara adjusted her scope, exhaled slowly, and fired. The round hit precisely where she had imagined it. Again. And again. No one saw it, but Mara allowed herself a small, private smile. Preparation wasn't just practice, it was proof. And soon everyone would see. Back at the base, tension grew. The SEAL officers doubted every new report, every measurement Mara submitted. Commander Davis leaned over a console, shaking his head. "Even if she somehow hits one target, can she handle 3 moving under pressure?" "I doubt it." Mara overheard, silently amused. She didn't confront them. She didn't need to. Results, not words, would make her case. Her first Real test arrived on a windy afternoon. The generals were inspecting the terrain. Cameras monitored every movement. The pressure was immense. Mara positioned herself, adjusted her breathing, calculated the trajectory with meticulous precision. "Ready?" she whispered into the comms. The first target fell. Silence. She adjusted, accounting for a sudden gust, and the second target dropped. The SEALs' jaws slackened, disbelief spreading across their faces. Mara's hands remained steady. Calm. Focused. Then came the third target, a more complex angle, partial cover, wind shifting. Every SEAL held their breath. Commander Davis exhaled sharply, muttering under his breath, "Impossible?" Mara ignored him. She exhaled, aligned the crosshairs, and fired. The bullet hit its mark, a perfect strike. A wave of stunned awe swept through the room. The generals, oblivious to the SEALs' private doubts, nodded in approval at the successful drill. Later, in the quiet of the armory, Mara removed her gear. One of the younger SEALs approached, hesitant. That was incredible. How did you?" Mara shrugged. "Years of practice. And listening when others said it couldn't be done." The boy laughed nervously. "Well, you just made all of us look bad." Mara smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time to rethink what bad really means." But not everyone was impressed. Commander Davis's pride had taken a hit. He leaned against the wall, watching Mara methodically clean her rifle. "You're good," he admitted reluctantly. "Better than I expected. But skill isn't enough. A single mistake under pressure and it's over. Can you handle that?" Mara met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "I already am." For the first time, Davis saw it, not just her talent but her mindset. Calm, unflappable, and precise. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need approval. She needed results, and she delivered. That night, Mara sat alone, staring at a distant city skyline. The impossible shot wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of courage, focus, and belief in herself when everyone else doubted. And the truth was clear. she was ready for the challenges ahead. Because the real mission wasn't about targets. It was about proving that even in a world dominated by experience, muscle, and ego, a simple woman with determination, preparation, and heart could change the game. And as the city lights blinked below, Mara knew the best was yet to come. 3 generals might have been impressed, but the real battle, one of strategy, courage, and heart, was only beginning. The early morning fog clung to the cliffs like a shroud, obscuring the jagged terrain below. Mara Hayes stood at the edge of the training range, rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon. Today wasn't about hitting targets, it was about endurance, strategy, and learning to anticipate the unpredictable. Around her, the SEAL officers warmed up, stretching, joking, and sharing stories of past missions. Most of them still looked at Mara as a curiosity, a rookie who had somehow survived the impossible shot drill. Whispers floated through the air. How did she do it? Was it luck? Can she do it again? Mara ignored the skepticism. She never relied on luck. Preparation, observation, and instinct were her allies. Commander Davis approached, clipboard in hand, eyes narrowed. "You think yesterday was enough, rookie?" he asked, tone teasing but edged with challenge. Mara met his gaze calmly. "Yesterday was proof. Today is refinement." He smirked, shaking his head. "Proof doesn't mean perfection. Out there," he gestured to the foggy cliffside, "conditions change. Wind, terrain, pressure. You need more than luck to survive, and to succeed." Mara nodded. "I know." Davis left, shaking his head with a faint smile. Even he had begun to respect her dedication. Training began. Mara moved methodically, adjusting her stance, testing her breathing and recalculating angles with each gust of wind. SEAL officers circled her, some offering unsolicited advice, others watching in awe. "Angle your scope slightly higher," one muttered. "That wind shift will push the round off by half a meter." Mara adjusted quickly, her fingers deft and precise. The bullet hit the target. Again. Another officer's jaw dropped. "Not bad for a rookie," he muttered. Mara allowed herself a small smirk. Not bad for someone who doesn't need validation, she thought. But not everything was smooth. During a simulated field exercise, Mara had to move across uneven terrain, under time pressure, while maintaining her focus on a distant target. She stumbled briefly over a rock, losing precious seconds. "Watch your footing," a SEAL barked. Mara bit back frustration. Mistakes happen. Correct them quickly. Move forward. She steadied herself, recalculated, and made the shot. Bullseye. It was a lesson she carried with her. Perfection was rare. Resilience was everything. Outside the training range, Mara developed her own routines. At night, she measured wind currents with portable instruments, noted how subtle temperature changes affected bullet trajectory, and mentally rehearsed each scenario she might encounter. One evening, a fellow SEAL, Jackson, lingered nearby. "You never sleep, do you?" he asked, half teasing, half incredulous. Mara looked up, eyes focused on the horizon. "Rest is for those who wait for success to come. I prefer to chase it." Jackson laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're relentless. I'll give you that." "You'll give me nothing," Mara replied, smirking. "I earn it." The tension wasn't just in the physical training, it was in relationships. The other SEALs questioned her approach, sometimes mocking her methods, sometimes challenging her judgment. But Mara remained patient, observing, learning. She understood that in any elite team, ego and rivalry were constant. Her role wasn't to compete for approval, it was to demonstrate results. She began to notice subtle shifts. Officers who had dismissed her before now offered cautious support, some even helping her refine angles, adjust breathing, or analyze the wind. The atmosphere was still charged, but respect began to emerge, not given but earned. Days turned into weeks, and the impossible shot loomed closer. Mara's training escalated. She practiced under simulated battle conditions, moving targets, shifting light, rain, and wind. Each session was meticulously recorded, her performance analyzed, recalculated, and refined. During one late-night exercise, Davis approached silently, leaning on a railing. "I'll admit it," he said quietly. "You've exceeded my expectations. Not just skill, but discipline. Most rookies crumble under this pressure." Mara exhaled slowly. "I don't crumble. I adapt." He nodded. "That's what makes the difference. But remember, skill alone won't save you when the real shot comes. You'll face fear, doubt, and the unexpected. Keep your mind sharp." "I will," Mara said, eyes steely. "I'm ready." Meanwhile, the general's inspection schedule became known. The pressure mounted. Every SEAL officer felt it, though few admitted aloud. Mara, however, thrived under the tension. Each challenge, each skeptical glance, each whispered doubt became fuel for her determination. One afternoon she overheard officers debating. If she misses even once, one said, it's over. Embarrassment, mission failure, she's too young, too inexperienced. Mara's lips curved in a subtle smile. They still don't know me. She filed the observation mentally. Preparation, focus, and instinct would prove them wrong. Again. The final training day arrived. Mara positioned herself on a high vantage point overlooking the valley where the simulated operation would occur. Cameras, sensors, and trainers observed silently. She inhaled deeply, feeling the wind whip past, the weight of expectation pressing down, and the thrill of the challenge building in her chest. The SEALs watched her align her scope, adjust for wind and distance, and calculate trajectory. Jackson whispered almost to himself, she's ready, maybe too ready. Mara's finger hovered over the trigger, but she waited. Timing was everything. Patience, precision, calm focus, these were her allies. And as the distant targets moved with unpredictable motion, she smiled faintly. She had trained for this moment her entire life. One shot, two shots, adjustments, recalibrations. Each bullet landed with precision, drawing astonished looks from observers. Confidence, skill, and preparation converged in perfect harmony. Commander Davis exhaled slowly, watching the results. Impossible, she's doing the impossible. Mara lowered her rifle, satisfied but calm. This was not the climax, it was the proving ground. The real test, the shot that would silence the doubters and astound even the generals, was yet to come. And she was ready. The wind howled across the ridgeline as Mara Hayes crouched behind a natural rock outcrop, her rifle aimed at the distant target. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from anticipation. This was no drill. The exercise had been elevated to real-world conditions, moving targets simulating high-ranking officers, unpredictable wind shifts, and the presence of cameras recording every angle. The SEAL officers lined the observation ridge above, whispers and murmurs carrying through the cold morning air. Commander Davis watched silently, arms crossed, a faint furrow between his brows. He had underestimated Mara once, but he would not make that mistake again. Mara's mind raced through calculations. Wind velocity, air density, trajectory angles, elevation differences, she accounted for each factor. Her finger hovered over the trigger, her breath steady. Despite the tension, her mind was calm, a paradox of focus and chaos. Jackson, standing near Davis, muttered under his breath, she's unervingly composed. Yes, Davis replied quietly, and that's why she scares me. The first target moved along a ridge approximately 1,800 meters away. Mara tracked its motion, predicting its path based on speed and angle. She exhaled, steadying her aim, and fired. The bullet struck perfectly, triggering a simulated hit indicator on the distance sensor. A ripple of surprise ran through the observers. Mara didn't flinch. She adjusted quickly, moving to the next target. The second target was partially obscured by terrain. Mara recalculated, adjusting her scope and compensating for wind. Another exhale. Another shot. Bullseye. The observers began to murmur audibly, disbelief in their voices. Even Jackson looked astonished. I didn't think she'd. Davis held up a hand. Shut it. Watch. The third target was the challenge. It was farther, moving at an unpredictable pace across uneven terrain, exposed to a sudden wind gust. Most experienced snipers would have hesitated, or failed. Mara, however, focused on rhythm, breathing, and timing. She remembered the words of her late mentor. Focus, anticipate, trust yourself. Every shot is a choice, not a guess. Mara exhaled, aligned the crosshairs, and fired. The bullet hit its mark. Perfect. Silence fell. The SEAL officer stared, mouth slightly agape. Commander Davis's face was unreadable. Mara lowered her rifle, breathing steady. Calm. Controlled. Victorious but never boastful. After the drill, Mara stepped down from the ridge. Jackson approached, a grin on his face. I owe you an apology. I didn't believe you could do it. Mara shrugged. Belief isn't required. Results speak for themselves. Jackson laughed nervously. You're relentless. I mean it. Nobody I've seen has that level of focus under this kind of pressure. Mara's expression softened slightly. Then maybe you'll pay attention next time. The day wasn't over. Mara faced another challenge, a series of rapid-fire moving targets simulating emergency conditions. Accuracy alone wouldn't suffice. Timing, anticipation, and composure under scrutiny were critical. One by one she struck each target. Observers whispered. Skeptics began to nod subtly. Even Commander Davis leaned forward slightly, as if seeing her talent fully for the first time. Remarkable, he muttered under his breath. That evening Mara reviewed the day's recordings. Every shot, every adjustment, every breath and movement analyzed for improvement. She was meticulous. Precision wasn't luck, it was calculation, instinct, and relentless repetition. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mentor, retired sniper Colonel Harris. Good work, Mara. Remember, skill without judgment is dangerous. You've proven ability. Now prove wisdom. One shot can change everything. One mistake can ruin it. Stay sharp. Mara nodded to herself. He was right. Skill alone wouldn't guarantee success. Strategy, patience, and timing were just as critical. The following morning, Davis called Mara aside. You've done more than survive your first real test. You've excelled under extreme pressure. But this next step, his voice lowered, it will test everything you've learned. The general's inspection is not a drill. Every move will be scrutinized. One miscalculation could have consequences. Mara looked him in the eyes. I'm ready. And I've already accounted for every variable I can anticipate. The rest, I'll adjust as it happens. Davis studied her silently, a grudging respect evident. Good. Don't disappoint me. Mara's lips curved faintly. I won't. Back at the barracks, Mara's roommate, Specialist Elena Torres, teased lightly. You're insane. Most rookies break down under that kind of pressure and you thrive. Mara smirked. It's not about thriving. It's about control. Anticipate, act, adjust. Control is everything. Elena shook her head, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Well, I guess I'll have to start taking notes from you. You're scary good. Mara's expression softened. Good. Let that scare them too. That night, Mara sat alone with her rifle, overlooking the city from the cliffside training ground. The wind whipped past her, cold and relentless. She reviewed every detail of the mission in her mind. Distances, angles, wind currents, time constraints, and contingencies. Every scenario had been accounted for. But she knew one truth. Nothing could prepare her for human unpredictability, the general's movements, the observer's distractions, the pressure of expectation. The real test was coming. And Mara was ready. The first real test had proven her skill, her focus, and her ability to adapt under pressure. The SEALs had begun to respect her, and even Commander Davis acknowledged her talents silently. But the impossible shot, the one that would silence doubt, astonish generals, and define her career, was still ahead. And for Mara Hayes, the thrill of the challenge was just beginning. The early dawn painted the sky in streaks of amber and violet as Mara Hayes crouched atop the ridge overlooking the valley. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Below, the terrain stretched in a complex patchwork of hills, ridges, and hidden depressions. This was the arena for the final mission, the impossible shot that would test skill, patience, and nerve. Mara scanned the landscape through her binoculars, noting every detail, the direction of the wind, the trajectory of the sun, and even subtle shifts in the terrain caused by erosion and vegetation. Each factor mattered. Miscalculate one variable and the shot would fail. Commander Davis approached, silent and observant. You've been through the drills, Mara, he said softly. But this is different. The generals will be watching. Every shot scrutinized. Every move analyzed. Are you ready? Mara met his gaze steadily. I've trained for this, sir. Every factor accounted for. The rest, I'll adjust as needed. Davis exhaled slowly, nodding. Good. Remember, precision isn't enough. Timing, observation, and intuition, those will make or break this mission. You've got the skill. Now prove the wisdom behind it. Mara spent the next hours meticulously mapping her plan. She marked vantage points, escape routes, and line-of-sight angles. Her notebook was a web of calculations. Bullet drop over distance, wind velocity, humidity impact, and even the influence of shifting shadows. Nothing was left to chance. Jackson and Elena observed quietly, offering minor adjustments and suggestions. If you account for the crosswind at 200 meters, it could drift your second shot slightly, Jackson noted. Mara nodded, quickly adjusting her calculations. Elena smiled. You really don't miss a detail, do you? Mara smirked faintly. Details are the difference between success and failure. As the day progressed, Mara conducted reconnaissance runs. She moved silently through the terrain, testing lines of sight and familiarizing herself with cover positions. The simulated mission's targets were placed strategically, 3 high-ranking generals represented by moving sensors. Mara had memorized their movement patterns and anticipated adjustments, but she also knew unpredictability was inevitable. During one observation, she noticed a sudden gust of wind sweeping through the valley. It wasn't in her calculations. Mara paused, recalibrating her approach. Adaptability would be as crucial as precision. By afternoon, the SEAL team gathered for a final strategy briefing. Mara laid out her plan with clarity. Positioning, the optimal vantage point minimizing exposure. Timing, accounting for wind shifts, sunlight glare and target movement. Sequence, the order in which each target would be engaged for maximum efficiency. Contingency, immediate adjustment protocols in case of misalignment or interference. The room was silent. Even the most skeptical SEALs were impressed. Commander Davis finally nodded. "You've done your homework, Mara. But remember, execution is where it counts." Mara met his gaze calmly. "I understand, sir. Execution is everything." That evening Mara returned to the ridge alone. She rehearsed mentally, visualizing each shot, each movement, each breath. She imagined the first target appearing at a specific point, the second moving unpredictably, and the third challenging her with partial cover. Her heart remained steady. Fear, doubt, or hesitation had no place here. A whisper of memory returned, her mentor's voice, reminding her that skill without judgment is dangerous. Every calculation must be paired with instinct. Every movement deliberate, every choice decisive. Night fell, bringing with it silence and uncertainty. Mara inspected her gear meticulously. Rifle cleaned and calibrated, ammunition checked, scopes adjusted. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. One mistake could ruin everything. But she welcomed it. Pressure sharpened focus, honed instincts, and clarified intention. She reviewed potential scenarios, mentally rehearsing responses to sudden gusts, moving shadows, or unexpected interference. Each contingency was accounted for, but Mara knew instinct would carry her through when unpredictability struck. The next morning the team arrived early. Mara moved to her position under cover, a natural formation of rocks providing concealment. Cameras tracked her movements. SEAL officers observed silently, holding their collective breath. The generals were en route, unaware of the young woman preparing the impossible. Mara's heartbeat was steady. Her training, preparation, and meticulous planning converged. Every moment led to this point. She checked her scope, adjusted for wind and elevation, and exhaled slowly. Focus narrowed. Nothing else existed, just her, the rifle, the targets, and the variables she controlled. Minutes stretched like hours as Mara observed. The first target emerged, moving predictably. She tracked, calculated, and fired. Bullseye. A subtle nod of satisfaction passed her lips. The second target moved faster, partially obscured by terrain. Mara adjusted instantly, accounting for wind shifts. Breath steady, fingers firm, she fired. Another perfect hit. Observers whispered in awe. Then came the third, the final challenge. Unpredictable, partially covered, affected by sudden wind gusts. Every SEAL officer held their breath. Commander Davis exhaled sharply, muttering, "Impossible?" Mara aligned, recalculated, and waited for the perfect moment. Instinct guided her. She fired. The shot struck true. Silence fell, thick and stunned. Even the generals, unaware of the skepticism beforehand, paused, astonished. Mara lowered her rifle, steady and composed. She had executed the impossible. Later, in the quiet of the command tent, Mara removed her gear. Jackson approached, shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe it. You just did it. All three, perfectly." Mara smiled faintly. "I planned, prepared, and executed. That's the difference." Elena, watching with awe, added, "You didn't just hit the targets. You changed how we all see what's possible." Mara's gaze turned to the horizon. Possibility is defined by belief and preparation. Nothing else. That night, Mara reflected on the day's events. The impossible shot had been executed, doubt silenced, and respect earned. But she knew this was only the beginning. The real world would challenge her in ways drills and simulations could not. And yet, for the first time, Mara Hayes felt the quiet satisfaction of mastery, tempered with the awareness that each victory was only a step toward greater responsibility. She gazed at the stars, thinking of the lessons learned, preparation, focus, and the courage to act when others doubted. The mission had been successful, but the journey had only just begun. Mara Hayes had proven herself, but the story was far from over. The valley lay in a tense stillness, the air thick with expectation. Mara Hayes crouched behind her concealment, the scope of her rifle aligned with precision that only years of relentless practice could produce. Her heart beat steadily, there was no fear, only focus. Every movement, every breath, every calculation had led to this moment. Commander Davis watched from a ridge above, arms crossed, lips pressed together. Even he, with decades of experience, could barely mask the awe in his eyes. Around him, SEAL officers whispered, some skeptical, some astonished. The generals were unaware of the storm quietly assembling above them. A young woman who had already defied expectation, now about to execute what was called impossible. The first target moved into view, a sensor simulating a high-ranking general. Mara exhaled slowly, adjusted her scope, accounting for wind, elevation, and distance. Fingers steady, she squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, echoing across the valley. The target fell bullseye. The observers gasped, whispers turning to murmurs. She actually did it, someone muttered. Mara didn't flinch. She moved seamlessly to the next target, her calculations precise, her confidence unshakable. The wind shifted, the target partially obscured by terrain, but Mara adapted instantly, adjusting her scope with fluid, practiced movements. Another shot, another perfect hit. Jackson's jaw dropped. Elena's eyes widened. Even Davis remained momentarily silent, stunned by the flawless execution. Then came the final target. The most difficult. Moving at an unpredictable angle, partially hidden by shadows, exposed to a sudden gust of wind from the ridge. This shot was beyond anything any SEAL had ever attempted under live conditions. Mara exhaled, letting her instincts align with years of preparation. Time seemed to stretch. Every breath, every subtle sway of the wind, every tremor in the terrain was accounted for. She waited, patient, steady, precise. A fleeting moment of clarity arrived. A tiny gap in the target's cover, perfectly aligned. Mara fired. The bullet traveled with lethal grace, hitting the mark dead center. The final sensor triggered, a flawless strike. Silence. Then astonishment. The SEAL officer stared, mouths agape. Commander Davis's hand went to his face, disbelief etched across his features. The generals, oblivious to the private doubts and murmurs, paused. One of them spoke, incredulous. Was that possible? Mara lowered her rifle, breathing steady. Calm. Controlled. She had done it. The impossible had become reality. Jackson shook his head in disbelief. I don't even know what to say. She just changed everything, Elena finished quietly, awe in her voice. Davis finally exhaled, nodding slowly. Yes, he muttered. Yes, she did. Unbelievable. Mara packed her gear, her mind already moving to the next steps. Recognition and applause were irrelevant. Success was defined by results, not by the awe or praise of others. She had proven herself, yes, but there was always more to learn, more challenges to face. The SEAL officers approached cautiously, some tentative, some filled with newfound respect. One muttered, You didn't just hit the targets. You made us all rethink everything we thought we knew. Mara smiled faintly. Results speak louder than doubt. After the mission, in the quiet of the armory, Davis approached Mara. I underestimated you. I won't make that mistake again. Mara looked at him steadily. Thank you, sir. But you don't need to underestimate me to learn from me. Just watch carefully. Everything else follows. He nodded slowly. A rare smile flickered. I'll do that. Even the generals, after reviewing the footage, were speechless. Their admiration was quiet but unmistakable. One remarked to the team, I've never seen precision like that. Not in training, not in combat. That young officer, she's remarkable. Mara remained in the background, listening quietly. Her satisfaction came not from accolades but from proof of skill, preparation, and composure under pressure. She had turned skepticism into respect, doubt into certainty. That night, Mara stood alone, overlooking the valley from her vantage point. The stars reflected like distant beacons in the dark sky. She thought about the journey, the training, the preparation, the countless hours of practice, and the moments of doubt and disbelief from others. She had faced the impossible and she had triumphed. But Mara knew one truth: each victory was a step, not the destination. The real test of skill wasn't just hitting targets. It was how one applied precision, judgment, and calm under circumstances no training could fully replicate. A subtle wind whispered past her face, carrying the echo of the day's triumph and the promise of challenges yet to come. Mara inhaled deeply, steadying herself. She had achieved the impossible. Now the world would watch, and she would rise to meet whatever came next. As she packed her gear to leave, a quiet thought lingered. The impossible can be done, but only if you are willing to face doubt, fear, and expectation without flinching. Mara smiled faintly to herself. This was only the beginning. The valley lay quiet in the late afternoon sun, shadows stretching across the terrain where Mara Hayes had executed the impossible shot. The SEAL team gathered, not for drills this time but for reflection. Mara moved among them calmly, her rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes alert but relaxed. She didn't need applause, her results had already spoken louder than any words. Commander Davis approached, a rare, subtle smile on his face. Mara, what you did today, it's extraordinary. I won't deny it, I misjudged you. But watching you handle pressure, adapt instantly and maintain composure, it's a masterclass in precision and judgment. Mara nodded respectfully. Thank you, sir. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about completing the mission. Davis studied her for a moment, then added quietly, almost to himself, few officers I've seen combine skill and mental discipline like that. The SEALs, previously skeptical, now regarded her with genuine admiration. Jackson approached, his grin sheepish. I guess I owe you more than an apology. Watching you today, it's like watching a different level of focus. You didn't just hit the targets, you changed the way we all see what's possible. Mara allowed herself a faint smile. Focus is a choice. Every second, every breath, every adjustment, it all matters. Elena, her roommate and ally, nodded in agreement. And you proved that even a rookie, underestimated by everyone, can redefine expectations. Mara's gaze swept across the group. Expectations are only as rigid as the minds that hold them. Skill and preparation can always redefine the outcome. Later, in the command tent, the generals reviewed the footage. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to admiration. One remarked, I've never seen precision like that. Not in training, not in combat. That young officer, she's remarkable. Mara remained in the background, quietly absorbing their reactions. She didn't seek praise, but the acknowledgement mattered, not for ego but as proof that preparation and resilience had tangible results. Despite the success, consequences surfaced almost immediately. A minor procedural error in communication during the final shot drew a reprimand from a logistics officer. Though minor, it was a reminder that perfection wasn't just about skill, it was about protocol, timing, and teamwork. Mara faced the criticism calmly. Acknowledged, I'll ensure adjustments are made to prevent recurrence. Her tone left no room for argument, no hint of defensiveness, only responsibility. Jackson whispered to Elena, she's not just good, she's disciplined. Even criticism doesn't rattle her. Elena nodded. And that's why she's unstoppable. That evening, Mara sat alone on the ridge overlooking the valley. The day's events replayed in her mind, the preparation, the pressure, the shot, the reactions. She allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Success was gratifying, yes, but it was also a reminder of what came next. Higher expectations, new challenges, and the scrutiny that followed anyone who accomplished the impossible. Her mentor's words echoed in her memory, skill without judgment is dangerous. Every victory carries a consequence. Stay sharp. Mara understood the depth of this truth now. Recognition had consequences. Admiration invited scrutiny. Every action from here on would be watched closely. The team gathered later for a debrief. Laughter and humor began to filter in, easing the tension. Mara, usually reserved, allowed herself to engage lightly. You didn't miss a single shot, Jackson said, half teasing, half awed. Do you sleep at all, or are you just a machine? Mara smirked. Machines can malfunction. I prefer focus. Elena laughed softly. Well, you may be a machine, but you're our machine. The room chuckled, the camaraderie a subtle reward for the day's tension. Even Commander Davis allowed himself a faint grin, watching Mara interact with the team with a composed ease. Respect had grown organically, earned through action, not demanded. Despite the humor and camaraderie, a sense of unresolved tension lingered. Mara sensed eyes watching, not just her SEAL peers but higher-ranking officers and strategic planners intrigued by her skill. Recognition was double-edged. It opened doors but also scrutiny and expectation. Every future mission would be compared to today's performance, every action judged against the impossible standard she had set. Mara welcomed the challenge. She had faced skepticism, doubt, and the impossible, and emerged victorious. Future challenges, whether procedural, strategic, or unexpected, would test her in ways today hadn't. And she would meet them as she always had, prepared, precise, and unwavering. That night, Mara returned to the ridge, looking over the valley one last time. The wind carried whispers of accomplishment, awe, and the subtle hum of what was yet to come. She inhaled deeply, letting the calmness of the night settle over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Higher stakes. Greater scrutiny. But Mara Hayes had proven one truth: skill, preparation, and composure could redefine what was possible, even in the eyes of skeptics, critics, and the most seasoned veterans. And though she had earned recognition, Mara knew that the real journey, the one that would define her career and character, was far from over. Shadows of future challenges loomed, quiet but unmistakable, promising tests even greater than the impossible shot she had just achieved. The night settled over the training grounds like a velvet curtain, soft and silent. Mara Hayes sat alone atop the ridge, her rifle resting beside her, the stars reflecting faintly on the valley below. The impossible shot had been executed. Skepticism had been silenced. Respect had been earned. Yet, despite the triumph, Mara felt only a quiet determination. She reflected on the journey, the grueling drills, the endless calculations, the pressure, and the constant doubt from those around her. Every challenge had shaped her, honed her focus, and strengthened her resolve. She realized that victory was never final. Every mission, every decision, every step forward would carry weight, consequence, and scrutiny. Commander Davis appeared quietly, leaning on a railing just behind her. He didn't speak at first, merely observing the young sniper who had surpassed all expectations. Finally he spoke, his voice low but sincere. "You've done something extraordinary, Mara. Most officers would break under the pressure you faced today. You didn't just succeed, you redefined what's possible." Mara looked at him, calm and collected. "Thank you, sir. But one mission does not define capability. It only proves preparation, focus, and the ability to adapt." He nodded slowly, a rare smile flickering. "I'll keep that in mind. And so should everyone watching." The SEAL team gathered nearby, exchanging laughter and stories from the day. Jackson clapped Mara lightly on the shoulder. "You know, I still can't believe it. Every shot, perfect. And the way you handled the pressure, unbelievable." Elena leaned against a rock, smiling. "You've earned our respect, Mara. But more than that, you've inspired us all. No more doubting rookies around here." Mara allowed herself a faint smile. "Good. Then we can focus on results, not expectations." Yet, even amid recognition and camaraderie, a subtle tension lingered. Higher-ranking officers had taken note of Mara's performance. Her skills would soon be tested in ways drills and simulations could not anticipate. She had set a standard, impossible to ignore. And with standards come expectations, challenges, and scrutiny. She understood this fully. Skill and preparation were only part of the equation. Wisdom, judgment, and adaptability would determine her long-term success. Every decision carried consequences, every action was observed, and the path forward was fraught with both opportunity and challenge. That night, Mara reviewed her gear meticulously. Her rifle was cleaned and calibrated, ammunition checked, and scopes adjusted. She thought not of praise, but of the next mission, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove her discipline, focus, and skill. Her mentor's voice echoed in her memory: "The impossible is a test, not a destination. Always anticipate, adapt, and act with precision." Mara understood the truth of these words more deeply than ever. She had passed the test, but the journey had only just begun. A faint noise stirred Mara's attention. From the valley below, she noticed subtle movement, shadows shifting unpredictably, wind carrying whispers across the terrain. Her instincts, honed over months of training, told her to observe, anticipate, and be ready. Even in victory, she remained vigilant. She realized that the impossible shot was not the end, it was the prologue to challenges far greater. Each mission would test not just skill but courage, judgment, and composure under pressure. And Mara Hayes had proven she could rise to meet them. As dawn approached, painting the sky in faint streaks of amber, Mara lowered her gaze. The valley stretched below her, calm yet full of unseen variables. She had mastered precision, focus, and composure, but life, like the wind and terrain, was unpredictable. A subtle smile touched her lips. The impossible had been achieved, skeptics silenced, and respect earned, but the world would continue to test her. And she would be ready. With a quiet exhale, Mara packed her gear and began the descent from the ridge. Each step was deliberate, measured, and confident. The journey had changed her. The impossible shot was not an endpoint, it was the catalyst for something far greater. Somewhere, in the shadows of the mountains and valleys, New challenges waited. Mara didn't know what they were yet, but she felt the thrill of anticipation. The future was uncertain, yes, but she had faced doubt, fear, and expectation, and emerged victorious. And so, Mara Hayes walked toward the unknown, ready for whatever came next. Her story was far from over.